Hey everyone, it's Madam Berry. Today we're working on days 6 through 9 of Cyberpunktober. The prompts for these days in order are Hack, Download, Noir, and Electric. So you might notice that I picked up some new toys at the local art supply store. I noticed I was struggling a ton the last few days with just my primary colors of inks and like randomly green to mix from. So I went and I filled out my secondary colors by picking up an orange and a purple. I also grabbed this teal color that was just really appealing to me, but in retrospect I can literally just mix this by myself very easily with just some blue and green and white. But it's a convenience shade and I do really like it, so I don't think it was that much of a waste really. The reason I picked up the orange and purple in particular was due to the specific hues of the primary colors that I own. They mix together to create kind of dull secondary colors. It doesn't show up well on camera, but the orange and the purple straight from the bottle are significantly brighter than the ones that I mix on my own. This takes a little bit to explain properly, so I'm dedicating the intricacies of color theory to its own video. So make sure you're subscribed because that's a video I don't want you to miss out on. Dedicated bottles of secondary colors also means that I don't have to use a ton of each color to mix new secondaries. I was starting to get concerned because I was already going through a ton of magenta, and it's still pretty early on in the month. I also picked up a nib pen? Whatever it's called. Fun fact, I used to hate these. We used them all the time in art class and I could never get a hang of them, and I honestly don't know why. Maybe it was just the paper that I was using, because we always used mixed media paper at best in school. So I'm not sure, maybe it was just ripping up the fibers of the paper. Whatever the case, I got rid of mine after college, for better or for worse, and I had to pick up a new one. And I picked up a new one while I was out getting these inks. Kind of on a whim, because I was like, I know I hate these, but I kind of want to try it again. And to my surprise, this thing writes smooth as butter. I didn't even get a really expensive one, I just got the regular speedball one that you can get for like $5 or something. I don't get it. It's interesting how sometimes you can go back to something that you disliked, and you actually like it the second time around. Never feel afraid to give something a second chance if you feel drawn towards it again. There's probably a way you can make it work for you. I actually wrote about this and lots more in my Creative Productivity Workbook. If you haven't yet, you can read the first chapter for free right now. Visit the link in the description for this and a bonus worksheet. I noticed my blue Higgins ink bleeds a lot, which is rather unfortunate. When I use it in washes, it's not so bad, but when I try to make thin lines with it, it bleeds into the fibers of the paper. It's really weird, I don't get it. I might have to replace this one eventually, but for now, I just avoid using this in my pen. A few things I learned and experimented with during these illustrations are playing with different colored outlines and increasing the contrast in my paintings. I'm having fun with this nib pen creating different colored outlines on things, especially when a subject is backlit, and so there's all of this colored light that's bleeding into the subject like rim lighting. And being able to use an outline color that's the same ink color as the lighting really gives that luminous effect. Another thing that I'm experimenting with during these illustrations is increasing the contrast in my paintings. One of the references that I'm using is Liam Wong's Tokyo book, a book full of late-night cyberpunk-inspired photography of Tokyo. The hardcover of this book, I believe, is unfortunately sold out, but you should be able to find the paperback edition still. I highly recommend it, especially if you're into street photography, photography of Japan and Tokyo, cyberpunk aesthetic, really freaking cool colors, any of the above. I absolutely recommend this book so much. And the thing that I noticed most about his photos is they use a ton of black to contrast with the bright lights of the neon. When I was taking art classes, I was always told never to color with straight black, or never to paint with just black straight out of the tube or out of the bottle. Unless we were doing just a black and white illustration, that was fine, but if we were using color, we always had to mix our own blacks using complementary colors. And we were told to do this because oftentimes straight black, straight out of the tube, can flatten a painting, whereas mixing your own darks and your own blacks with complementary colors gives the dark parts of your painting a much richer feel than just using black straight out of the tube. And so while I was working on these paintings, I avoided for the life of me coloring things in with straight black. Like, I would use black to outline, but I would never use it to color. But as this month went on, I'm actually kind of doing the opposite. I'm using the colored inks to outline, and I'm finding a lot more comfort in using straight black to render the darkest parts of my paintings, and that really helps the colors, as bright as they are, pop out of the paper, because it adds such a huge amount of contrast to the piece. Another thing that I'm taking from Liam Wong's Tokyo book is his use of color palettes. So he does a lot of work with complementary colors, and I've been trying to integrate that into my own illustrations because I think complementary colors are a great way to add that contrast in your work without it being a value contrast. It instead is a color contrast, and the juxtaposition of the two colors on the opposite ends of the color wheel really helps the minority of that color stand out. So if you've got a painting with a ton of blue in it, and then you have this big orange spot, the orange spot in the painting really stands out. So the first few illustrations this month were shaky, but I'm slowly getting a handle on integrating color palettes with the level of contrast that I want in my illustrations. You may notice that the last painting of the bunch is much larger than the other ones. That's because I'd like to use it as a book cover. Yep, I'm planning, or at least hoping, to make an art book with all of the illustrations that I make with this prompt list. At some point, I would like to run a Kickstarter, so if you like these paintings, keep an eye out for an announcement at some point. This probably isn't going to be something that happens in 2020. I really don't feel like dealing with a Kickstarter squeezed between election season and the holiday season, but hopefully sometime next year I'll make this happen. Be sure to give this video a like for me if you enjoyed it. It really helps out the channel by letting YouTube know to show this video to other people. Also make sure you're subscribed, because I don't want you to miss out on all of the other videos that I have planned in the future. If you'd like to see a video where I break down all of the differences between painting with inks and painting with watercolors, you can do that right here. Until next time, take care!